I decided that the third worst PC port that I played this year is Dead Space. And the reason
Ouch.
for this is because so there's a lot of stuff going well for Dead Space. Amazing visual audio remake of the original game. Good menu system that allows you to tinker with things in real time. Something that other games on the list do not have at all. Yeah, looks great, sounds great. General GPU performance, really, really good. But as soon as you start playing the game on PC, you will know it. It is like one of the highest rated comments about it in the Steam forums, like constant discussion about it. It's in the title of our video. This game has incredible stutter struggle.
Oh God.
And it's weird because you'd think on the surface it seems like it should be fine. It's Frostbite. There's a shader pre-compilation step as the game starts up, which is usually always good news. But you get into the game and you realize a lot of it isn't necessarily shader compilation stutter. Mm-hmm. Like there's a handful of them, and I point them out in the video that I made on it and on the update video I made on it as well. They happen like, when you start like a cutscene sometimes, or when you do it something for the first time, it can happen still. But most of them are from like the just walking across the game world, and it's hard to know without full profiling tools, and that's not our job at DF, but it most likely is related to the loading and deloading of the game world around you.
Yeah, because when the game was released, I actually spoke with them, and that was one of the big features that they introduced to Frostbite that did not previously exist in the engine, right? Mm-hmm. Was this streaming of a consistent world, loading in new structures, unloading other structures as you move through it. This like streaming system. I mean, there's obviously data streaming in Frostbite anyway, but the way they were doing it and the way they were able to do this seamless world, that was new to the engine. And I suspect that this being the first attempt at that, it's probably somehow tied to it. Right. And it's just a side effect of the implementation. And it is a bummer that they weren't able to solve this, because Frostbite games in general, I say, usually do exhibit excellent performance.
Right.
I had just played through Need for Speed Unbound, and I've only tested on my rig, to be fair, but that game runs like greased lightning. Super high frame rates, no stutter, like in the open world. It feels awesome. This is so much worse. And you're right. I would say like at points you think this doesn't seem that bad, but it's the problem with the fact that it's just they kind of keep popping up as you move through the game. So it feels like you never really shake the stutters. Anytime you do anything major, you get to a new scene, some kind of big new thing happens in the game, all the stuff that should be drawing you into the world of Dead Space, you get hit with these stutters, and it's constantly pulling you out of the experience.
And that is just like you're saying that even though you're talking from the perspective of a larger rig, like if you're on a mid-range rig, the size of these stutters is also larger. Yeah. It's proportionally larger. That's something that I showed off in my video back then. And if you're like, the Ryzen 5 3600 is usually pretty great for getting that console level performance. And in this game, you're just nowhere near it in terms of fluidity. The consoles also have a little bit of like traversal stutter in the game, and it usually manifests as like double animation frames and stuff like that. But here on a Ryzen 5 3600, the game is it's just not at all fun to play. And it loses all of the ambience and atmosphere because every single time you go near a door, and the game has tons of doors. That was the original Xbox 360, PS3, PC 2008 design of the game. And every single time you go near one, the game will stutter. And you can just go back and forth in areas and just constantly having it stutter. Oh, it's such a shame. And the reason why I want to call this one out very specifically, along with some of the other ones on this list that we'll be getting to momentarily, is that the game got some updates post-launch, but that was it. The game was dropped like a hot potato. Like
that really bums me out too, because I like this remake a lot. And
it's such a bummer.
To their credit, they did actually fix the console version. If you recall, it launched on console with VRS, I guess the non-hardware VRS variant on PlayStation 5 specifically, but it didn't look great on any of them, and it was forced. And it had such a detrimental impact on the image quality that it just kind of destroyed the game. Like, especially in dark areas, it was just nonsense. Noisy pixels everywhere, and it looked terrible. And they did actually go back and fix that at no real performance cost, interestingly. So they were able to achieve the same performance as before on the consoles at 60 frames per second without destroying the image. And I
Yeah.
believe VRS remains an option on PC, and it is a little bit better because it is the higher resolution, or it's hardware VRS.
Right.
But I did think on PC it still had the same problem because it seemed to apply to the pre-upscaled version. So if
Right.
you're like using, say, DLSS, rendering at a lower internal resolution, it's applied to that lower internal resolution and then upscaled from there, and you end up with an exceptionally nasty looking image. So
Yeah, it was just like, for the amount of degradation it added to the image, the performance uplift that I could measure on PC was really small. It was really weird. It almost feels like it was labbed in some sort of way where it looked good on paper, but in practice it just wasn't actually something that was great. Thankfully, they allowed you to toggle that on and off on PC eventually.
Yes.
So that's all good. It would have not necessarily been that way
Yeah.
at launch. This is just one where it really bumps me out because I love the game. I love the original Dead Space. I love everything that they did with the remake, visually, auditorially, but etc. Really great, but it's just so. And the thing is, it won't necessarily ever be fixed at this point in time because they've dropped it.
nope.
And so in like 5 years from now, you could still be loading the game up on a big PC. And because, IPC increases and memory subsystems are not increasing the same way they did in like the 90s, you'll
Nope.
still be coming up against these walls where the game will still stutter most likely. And that's really bad. That's not what you want to see for the legacy of a game. So really big shame here that
Yeah.
it is the way it is.
This is also one of those games that has so many of those like homemade fixes. You go onto all the forums, like, yeah, if you go into this folder and rename this to this and then put this file here and then delete this file, it fixes all the stutters. And then you see it didn't fix mine all below it. So there's all these anecdotal points about it fixing stutters, and it's hard to know what's going on with any of this stuff, and it's all just very frustrating. But when you look at conversation of this game on PC forums, it is everybody's talking. How do I
Everybody's
get rid
talking
of stutter?
about it. Yeah.
And you kind of seemingly can't do it completely.